Hey, hey, hey.
What's up, Dr. Tiff? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you too, Coach Val. How's it going?
It is going great. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing good, except for this pollen out here.
I know,
That
right?
is a different story. So, other than that, everything's going great. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight for another episode of Tuesday Talks. And once again, I think we have another amazing topic. Um, Making sure that we know whether our kids are thinking for themselves and teaching them to own their own thinking. And what really got us talking about this as we developed the show was some personal experiences that we had. I'm going to start with yours, Val. You want to share your story, like guided us towards this topic of like, what is going on with the kids?
Absolutely. Because if you followed us for any amount of time, you know I am good for a good old educator story and experience. Okay. So, um, since I stopped teaching in the classroom and got my new job at GPB, I've still been tutoring. And so I still get those kid interactions one on one. Well, this particular story is about one of my clients, and we were going over like a geometry concept. I don't want to scare anybody, but we were talking about circumference and area in those formulas using pi. And so she was struggling. She was having a hard time. And I realized that, okay, I need to break this down and start at the beginning, like the basics, like the absolute foundation, right? So I do that, but I've been doing this long enough where I also know starting from the beginning also means using like simple sentences. Like I'm not throwing a whole bunch of vocabulary or anything and don't use a lot. So I started and gave her two. Said two simple sentences to her, and stopped and said, "Tell me what you understood from them." And she looks at me with a blank stare and says, uh, I don't understand. So I'm like, okay, this frustrates me as a teacher, as it does most teachers and parents. I know. And so I look at her before I repeat it again. I recognize the problem. And I said, listen, what I said to you was not complicated. Like it wasn't overly, like using big words and stuff. I said, what you did was you were listening for me to tell you what to do, and you were not hearing anything else because it didn't sound like what to do, and therefore you don't know what I said. I need you to stop listening for what to do, and I need you to listen to understand what I'm saying to you. And she kind of looked, and I said, so we're gonna try this again. You're listening for understanding. And so I had to do it two more times, but the next time I did it, I could see a difference in how she was processing. And so we went through it that time, and she couldn't, she remembered a little bit, and I was like, it's okay, you're not used to it, you've trained your brain to listen for what to do. We're gonna try it one more time. And then the next time she got it, and eventually in that process, within a matter of probably like 10-15 minutes, she was doing problems on her own. So like sometimes it's not that the kids ain't listening, it's what are they listening for, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we talked about, do kids listen to understand, or are they listening to be told what to do? And so that made me start to think, when I'm talking to my own son, when I've talked with the clients that I work with for speech therapy, like I am doing a lot of telling them what to do. It's inherent. It's what we do as parents, as teachers. You're explaining something and then you're telling them something to do. Um, and so then we are kind of programming them to always be listening for what you're telling them to do versus absorbing what you might be explaining and then crafting that expression of it on their own. So whatever it is, taking in that information and then doing something with it that's of their own thought process. So it made me, excuse me, think to, what you described, how you were with your student in the special education world. That's known as chunking information. You're giving small chunks of information, and then you might be asking that question. Now tell me back what it is that I said, or what it is I told you to do. So we are training them to follow that pattern. So then, how do we break that pattern? And I think it takes some reflection, some self-reflection as the adults in the situation, as either a teacher or a parent. It takes some self-reflection for us to think back to how we are giving information, and the way and the expectation we have of our kids or our students on what they do with that information as well. Because we don't want a bunch of kids to sit back waiting to be told what to do. We want innovative thinkers, we want problem solvers. We want these kids to go out and be able to, just explore, experience. And that comes through you taking initiative to think for yourself, to do things for yourself, to try things out, to take in information, and then, like I said before, expressing it in their own way. But if we don't self reflect first on how we as the adults are constantly giving that information and telling kids what to do, I think if we don't start there, then we won't be able to undo what has been done. And you undid it in a matter of minutes in your session with your student.
Well, because listen, again, 18 and a half years, this is what I've been fighting. Like, I probably could say that this is in the top three of the most irritating parts of trying to teach kids something. And for me, knowing myself, if I have an irritation somewhere in my life, then I want to fix it as fast as possible. So I'm going to start troubleshooting and figuring out ways. Well, it wasn't until like recent years where I've been doing a lot of um, coaching training. So, I team life coach on the side, and so I've gone through courses and programs to hone that skill. And of course, when you start working on personal development, you're right. One thing is reflection, but it's also reflection on what? And in this case, it's reflection on communication. So my courses have broke down like how we communicate, and when you say something to somebody, they are going through a whole mental process within themselves for how they filter that through their experiences, their background, their identity, even what they think of them, and just how the brain like physiologically works. If y'all don't know, I'm a little sciencey. Okay, I'm a little geek. I geek out on this stuff. So, like, in that reflection, that's what I had to reflect on. How is this person perceiving what's coming out of my mouth and the way that it's coming out of my mouth? How are they interpreting that, processing it, and then deciding what to do with the information they made up?
Right.
It's what
Because if we don't self-reflect though and really think on how we are fostering this generation of kids who need to be told what to do, if we don't do that part, you will always think that the child is the issue, whether it's the student or your own personal child. You always think they're the issue. They don't listen, they're not understanding, they're not paying attention, they're getting distracted, and you will look for them to solve the problem that really is being initiated with you. And so then you end up in this spiral where everybody's frustrated, right? You got the
Yes.
kid is frustrated, and then you're frustrated. And I think sometimes we can go from one extreme to the other. Even in the self-reflection, let's say you think about it and you say, yes, I'm doing that with my student. I'm doing that with my kid. I'm always telling them what to do instead of giving them information and seeing how they've processed it, how they've understood it. We go from that extreme to now not telling them anything to do, and
Hands off.
hands off. And then we have another disaster on our hands. So I think if you self-reflected, then you got to slowly take those training wheels off, just like you did with, okay, I'm giving a lot of information. Let me give small bits of information using more simplified language, and then asking the student to repeat it back to me, and then grow from there. And I think that is a better approach than, I know I've done that myself in the past. Like, okay, you know what? They're not listening anyway. So I'm just going to, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to see what happens. But then we haven't really given them the tools to figure out how to think on their own for the purposes of learning or completing a task. Does that make sense?
It absolutely. While you're saying that, I'm going through my head thinking about countless conversations I've had with teachers, and I've even done it myself early on. It's like that moment of frustration when you've said, like, you've explained all the stuff and said what they need, and they've even like, you know, the kids have learned how to give responses that look like I'm understanding. You know, they've learned how to listen for cues and give back, you know, keywords and stuff. And then you get to the end of that and you say, okay, here's the work to do. And then the teacher ends up with a slew of hands or a line at his or her desk, or kids just sitting there not doing anything. You ask them, you tell them get started, and they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, that is the most frustrating moment. And so, like you said, we have to stop though and reflect. And one way that in the whole, you know, class, one way that I've managed that before is to stop everything. Similarly to what I did with the student individually, but I think part of the key to what makes me doing it like a little more efficient and faster is, like, I explain this concept to the kids. So I take a couple of minutes, not long at all, and be like, this is what just happened. Okay. Because they, like you say, you have to teach them. They have to learn to be aware of how they're interacting in their world within their experiences. No, it's not that you just don't understand. But let me teach you a little something extra right here to help you later, because I don't want to have to go through this again. And I'm not, let me correct that. I'm not going to go through this again. So you're going to do this today.
I like that approach because, you know, just as adults have a lot going on in our day-to-day lives, whether you're in the role as parent or teacher, kids have a lot going on in their minds as well. It might not be as high level, of course, as what the adults have to think about, but it still is a lot for them. So to stop everything like you've done in your classes and say, hold on, let me get everybody's attention and let's talk about what just happened. And then talking about what occurred and how it needs to be different is huge, because a lot of kids just aren't aware. Their you know, attention spans are synonymous in part to age level, and so a 5-year-old, we are expecting that attention to, you know, last about 5 minutes. So I think it's important to understand that and make sure that you have the focus and attention when you are calling them to think about what just happened. This is what happened, and this is what I don't want to happen. And we do that a lot as parents at home, right? Like, you know, just before we came on tonight, my son spilled some juice downstairs, and I was just getting ready to be like, you need to get this, make sure you wipe this, giving him all the steps. He has made a mess before, and he has heard from me how he either cleaned up very well or cleaned up halfway or didn't clean up well at all. One of those three things. And so he spilled it. He saw what he did. And I said, you know, make sure you get that up. And then that was it. Because before we got to the point where I just took hands off, we have done the preceding steps where I was telling him everything to do. Then I stopped to ask him, the next time he spilled something, hey, what do you need to get in order to clean that up? He might go get the kitchen towel. And I'm like, no, 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 just get paper towels. And it's too much liquid. I'm explaining to him why we would use one, material over another. And so then over time, we've gotten to this point now where I can say, you know what to do. And I truly hope that there's no sticky mess downstairs, when I finish. But that's how we got to that point. And I think the same sequence of steps can occur in any home or classroom as well. But it does take more effort on the adult's part because it is much easier just to tell kids what to do. Do this, do this, do this. What do I need to do? Do this, do this, like you can list out the steps on the board. It's much more time consuming to go through the steps of chunking information, showing them, reflecting with them, giving them the space to think about their responses, giving them space to come up with the actions that they are going to do. That takes up a lot of time. And I know on here we talked many, many episodes about the classroom time. Like it's not much. Kids are at school for a long time, but there's a lot crammed into every minute. So I like the way that you've incorporated it into your classroom in the past, where you take in the moment to discuss what happened and how it needs to change for the next time.
Yeah, because like even with you and your son, what I heard was it takes that upfront time because all learning takes time, right? You have to be able to process and you have to be able to, take multiple attempts to learn from whatever mistakes you're going to make. However, the tables turn eventually. And the time you took the very first time to explain it, the next time it doesn't take as much time. And then the time after that, it doesn't take that much time until eventually it's no time because I know one time my youngest, he's 7, he spilled something and I didn't even know before I saw him going to clean it up. Like he didn't even tell me. And I mean, that's where we want our kids to get to. I mean, he don't do that all the time. Let me just, he's getting there. But just the fact that on that particular time, we've gone through this enough for him to be like, either I know what to do or I know what my mama gonna say. Either way, like we have learned to handle the situation. That's funny because my students will, like when they take their tests and stuff, especially the ones that I've tutored like one-on-one afterwards, they'll, I'll ask them some reflection questions, how'd you do on the test? How did you think through this? And there's been a lot of times when they said, because I heard your voice in my head. This what I'm saying. So it's not that they don't care.
Yeah.
It's not that they are just not listening. That is not the majority of these kids. They just need someone who's going to have a little bit of patience and take some time with them because we're supposed to be training them up. And if you ever been on the job, training takes time. Like, a minimum of 2 weeks for the simplest jobs.
Right. And I know we're like closer to the end of the school year now. So I think this is really important for teachers to think about for the start of the next school year. Like starting out the school year this way will set the kids up to know, okay, in this class, because it might be different in other classes. It just might be. But in your class, this is what the expectation is. We are not going to have me stand at the front of the class and tell you what to do every step of the way, every single day. I'll show you I'll explain. I'll ask you to demonstrate your understanding of what I explain. And then I'm going to hand it over to you to be able to know what to do. And to some extent, teachers, do that, especially in the lower grades, kindergarten, learning that morning routine when you come in, where you put your book bag, Where do you make your lunch choice? Where do you know all of these things that they need to do? And at the beginning, you have to tell them, hey, this is the routine. Remember, everybody, you're giving them the instructions. And then the expectation is that within a couple of weeks, you're not needing to say that all the time. And so I think that same concept can just be explored in the academic areas as well, because we do want them to really think for themselves. Because when they do that and they make mistakes, then that's how they learn. The way that my son learned, hey, using this kitchen towel to clean up this huge puddle of whatever I spilled on the floor is not the best way. Either he learned that on his own or I explained to him why that's not the best way to get all of this liquid up. Then the next time he's going to think about that. And so the same thing in the classroom when it comes to any academic piece, you're going to give them feedback on what they did that had them arrive at the incorrect answer. And then you will expect them to take what you've explained and implement that the next time, so then they can start to self-correct. They are analyzing their own thinking, they're analyzing their own work, and then making any adjustments that need to be made. And I think that's how you make some self-sufficient, self-reliant, students that claim their own thinking and they go beyond just being told what to do. They're taking on what you have explained and then using that knowledge to solve things for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That student that I started the story with at the beginning of this episode, she was able to go on and do problems by herself because she gained confidence. It's scary for kids to take risks, especially to take a risk for something that could reflect their intelligence. I was just reading a post not too long ago, and the teacher was asking the group, like, the principal told them not to do like a thumbs up, thumbs down understanding check in class. And we as teachers, we are responsible for doing like all kind of assessment of where the kids are during the lesson. Well, that's one of them. I use it like faithfully, right? It's quick, it's easy, you get a general sense of what's happening. Principal told them not to use it, and so the teacher was asking for other suggestions. And of course, somebody asked, why were you not able to use it? Because a parent complained that their child felt bad when they had to show that they didn't get it right, or they didn't understand with their thumbs down. We create children in situations like these where they're taught that they have to be sheltered. Their emotions have to be sheltered. That every environment or every experience has to cater to their feelings. And if they feel negatively impacted in any way or any negative feeling, then the environment has to change and not something within the kid. Like, and it irritated me because I know strong kids are built, need to be resilient. And you cannot cultivate resiliency in a child if every time they experience a bump or a bruise, they are coddled and then told that it's someone else's fault and you have to blame someone outside of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that goes back to kids owning their own learning and understanding that it's okay for something to be challenging. It's okay for you to get answers wrong. It's okay for your essay to come back with all these marks and, corrections in it, because that is how you learn. And I think that, we slide into even a bigger topic of, like you said, altering the setting to make kids feel successful versus letting them fail and learning some resiliency. And that all ties back into how they approach their learning. Kids want to be told what to do because then they know that I'm going to do the right thing
Right.
versus let me listen to understand and then try something on my own the way it works for me.
Exactly.
So I think those things go hand in hand. And so if you are the teacher or the parent that is altering the setting to help the child feel successful, if you say to your class with the thumbs up, thumbs down example that you gave, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. And you know in the back of your mind it's because somebody feels bad that they have to put a thumbs down, then how about we celebrate the kids who put their thumbs down to say, thank you so much for your honesty because this is hard. It might be easy to some, it might be hard to others. Share a personal connection of your own academic journey with the class, but celebrate the ones who gave their thumbs down because in the world that we've created now for a lot of these kids, that takes a lot of bravery to admit that this is hard and to say it in front of peers who, can make fun of you because you don't get it or whatever, but take the time to celebrate the kids in those instances that had the challenges. Let's normalize being in challenging situations and admitting something is hard, not to be the, whining kid, the complaining kid, the kid that doesn't want to try. We're not celebrating that, but we are celebrating, the fact that they're first recognizing that something is hard, and second, being open to sharing that with the adult. And then you can guide them on where they need to focus their attention, their listening to understand so that they can improve the skill.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that is what, once you get them, first of all, it lets them know you care. Because that's another trigger for students. They're like, this teacher is out to get me. This teacher doesn't really care about me. Some students even think we want you to fail. I don't know. Anyway, that's another topic. But it gets them to realize that one, the teacher cares about me, and the teacher says this is good, and the teacher thinks that I can get through this.
Mm-hmm.
And letting kids knowing that this is not the end, kids knowing that there's possibility on the other side of my struggle and that my teacher is going to help me get there. Like sometimes that's all they need to put in that little bit of extra effort, to get through the struggle.
Yeah. And I feel like I can hear somebody saying right now, well, when I was a kid, nobody told me they cared. I just got the work done. I just did it. And that might be true, but we are living in different times. The world is not the same. School might look the same where the teacher's standing at the front of the class and the kids are sitting in desks, but the kids are not the same. So if you've been in teaching for 20 plus years, you have witnessed the shift in how these kids show up in the classroom. And you can choose to bang your head up against that wall to try to, make them be the type of kid that existed 20 plus years ago, or you can adjust yourself to do just what you said. Let them know that you care. Let them know that you see their struggle. Let them know that it's okay to struggle and see how they respond to that, because you humanize yourself as the teacher instead of just this vessel of information and demands. If you humanize yourself, they don't need to know all your personal business. But if you just humanize yourself, that goes a long way to helping kids start to trust you, trust themselves, and then take that ownership of their learning and their thinking as well. So I think we benefit from that. And again, starting off next school year with that in mind would be really helpful. I think even having a professional development on that type of topic would be helpful for teachers because it can be hard to transition the way you've done things for many, many years. I mean, you get into a habit and it's easy to start something new and then go back to your default because you kind of say, oh, this isn't working. Let me go back to what I was doing before. Then asking yourself, was that working? Because maybe it wasn't.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea, Dr. Tiffany.
Yeah. So let us know how this episode resonated with you through the chat comments, in the show notes. Our email address is there. Shoot us an email, make a comment on social media, and let us know if this is something that you've already implemented into your classroom this school year, or if it's something that you'll consider starting up for the upcoming school year. So thanks for joining us tonight. That's our episode. So we'll see you next Tuesday.
See ya.
Bye.